Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Dan Griffin and I'm Support Revolution's Head of Marketing. I'll be online today with you to introduce our speakers, kicking off each tactic for discussion and answering or forwarding any of your additional questions to our speakers. But just a few housekeeping points before we begin. You'll notice that we've muted everybody automatically. That's to ensure that we have minimal noise disruption throughout the webinar, but you will notice there is a text chat box on your screen that you can use to send me messages, which I will either answer privately or I'll forward on to our speakers if you have any questions you'd like answered in this session. You'll also find in that window we've placed a few resources for you to download as well. One of those is a white paper that accompanies today's session. This outlines why you should be leaving Oracle support and how to do it, and I highly recommend downloading that for future reference. The other download is a fact book that gives you information on third-party support generally and Support Revolution specifically, outlining the pros and cons of why you would consider moving from Oracle or SAP support to us. Obviously, I'd recommend downloading that as well. But on to the reason why we're all here today. If you're watching this, you're likely being squeezed by Oracle. You may be looking to leave them, but are struggling to see how. You may be annoyed by a recent fine. You may be frustrated that your support costs keep increasing and you can't work out where that money's going. Especially now, organizations like yours are looking for two things: more freedom in your vendor relationships and more cash to invest in what matters to your organization right now. But that all boils down to one problem, right? How do you negotiate with Oracle? To help us answer this question, we've asked two experts on Oracle negotiations to share their best practices when it comes to getting the most value from your Oracle contracts. The first is Support Revolution's founder and CEO, Mark Smith. Mark originally founded the Oracle and SAP consultancy PDG Consulting in 1998 before refocusing the company into Support Revolution in 2012. Mark has over 20 years of experience working with both Oracle and SAP customers across the globe, and as the CEO of Support Revolution brings unrivaled knowledge of how to get the most out of your Oracle support services and contracts. Our second guest is Forrester's global software vendor negotiation expert, Mark Bartrick. Mark's focus at Forrester is helping businesses save money on their software and SaaS contracts through advising and coaching them through negotiations with vendors like Microsoft, SAP, Salesforce, and of course, Oracle. Mark has a wealth of knowledge of the tools and tactics you can use to tip a negotiation in your favor, as well as the tactics your vendor will try to use to stop you. I'm sure everyone will agree that we're incredibly lucky to get the pair of you talking together on this topic, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what tactics and tips you both have to share. So, starting us off, Mark B, what is Forrester's view on the possibilities of negotiating with Oracle? Is it even possible?
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, it's an interesting question. A lot of customers of Oracle's think it's tough to negotiate with them. Many people think it's really hard to negotiate with these guys. You know, the possibilities of getting a decent deal out of them is not easy. But that's a mistake, because yes, absolutely, you can negotiate with Oracle. And let me give you two versions of that. One is in the sort of business as usual world before this crazy pandemic we're all living through came along. In the business as usual world, Oracle have, they've got professional salespeople. They handle sales objections very well. They're very well trained at manipulating deals and pricing. You just have to look under the covers and understand that on the sales side, they're motivated by sales and commissions. So they're obviously driven by quarterly and monthly targets. So they have to do deals. So even they have to give more sometimes to try and win those deals, get them over the line. They're also driven as an organization to increase clients' estates. So sometimes that means renegotiating the whole estate. So there's an opportunity. And of course, it's May 31st coming up is Oracle's year end. So we're right now in the heat of the time when Oracle sales reps are desperately trying to close their numbers and get the deals over the line. So you imagine there's a lot of sales pressure there to do a deal. And that pressure can mean they give away stuff to make you as a customer sign and get you over the line. So there's always pressure on them to do a deal. The other thing you want to recognize is that for most clients, even in business as usual times, they got prices that are so inflated that most clients, right off the bat, are getting 50% discount or more, and sometimes very deep discounts. So clearly that that demonstrates you can get great deals out of Oracle. Clients do think sometimes that when Oracle's an incumbent and they've been with them for years, they've got no choice. There's no competition to use as negotiation leverage. They think there's nothing they could do. They can't cancel the contract. The products are embedded in their organization and they're running their business. And so they think, what, I've got no leverage here to negotiate. I've got support renewal coming up. Nothing I can do about it apart from beg a little bit, but perhaps get nothing for that. And they just roll over with a renewal with some sort of annual increment. So a lot of customers think like that, but it's false thinking, because everything is negotiable with Oracle, whether it's a support renewal or it's brand new stuff you're buying. And just to finish this piece off from my side, and I'll pass to Mark for a bit of commentary, obviously that's kind of business as usual. Yes, they're very negotiable. But with the pandemic, you have to imagine, as a vendor, their new business sales forecast has collapsed in the last few weeks. So they're now chasing anything that's moving, desperately trying to make some numbers out of it. So anybody right now who's in a position of placing some net new business with Oracle, increasing an estate or doing something brand new, moving to their cloud or whatever, very powerful negotiating position, because Oracle's desperate for your business. You are one of the only few games left in town. The rest have either been delayed or cancelled. People aren't spending net new money anywhere else. So make best use of that. So not only in business as usual time, negotiate, get deep discounts. Right now, you could probably get the best deal you could ever get from Oracle. Mark, do you have any comments?
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, I think it's very interesting times, as you say. And the other thing to remember is that Oracle have always been in a kind of a very strong position, and their sales guys, they're not traditionally sales guys, because they've been in the a one-horse race, really. It's your business, and the only place that you can get that deal from is Oracle. So they've been in a very, very strong position. And now with these uncertain times, it's the people with the pushing power are the customers. And so if you can really stand strong, know what you want before you go into that negotiation, and understand that these guys are there and they want to do the deal, but they are they're tough negotiators. They do it all the time. So you've got to be prepared when you go into this. And it's going to be a battle, but stick to your guns, understand what you want, understand what's a good outcome for you. And I'm sure, like Mark, you've just said, that there's not many people in these times going to be making great big investments. So for those of you that are negotiating with Oracle, whether it's on the front foot for new purchases or whether it's on the back foot because you've been maybe caught up in an audit and Oracle's trying to get revenue from you that way, you're still the person who's holding the money, and it's only you that can release that money. So just stand strong and understand you're in a really strong position at the moment.
Thanks both very much for that. That makes total sense. And so moving on to the tactics that you've both recommended in advance for this session, let's push through them and start talking about them. So Mark S, from Support Revolution's perspective, the first tactic you've recommended is understanding your contract. Can you give us a bit of an outline to that, please?
Of course. Yeah, there's a lot of customers that maybe make the assumption that the Oracle contract is the Oracle contract. And what we've learned, we've been in the Oracle marketplace for over 20 years. And one of the guys that I know used to handle all the contracts for Oracle. And one of the things that he told me way back when was, there are different contract clauses in different terms for different customers, and you can negotiate. So what they tend to have is a library of different terms that can be included. So, for instance, they might not negotiate on payment terms, but they might say, well, we don't mind if this contract is governed by UK law or German law or US law. So that can be to your advantage, and you can get that priced wherever you want to. But I think the other thing within that is that you really need to understand what that contract says, because those contracts can be different. If you don't understand that, you can't negotiate. You don't know where you are. So going through those contracts, understanding your estate, understanding what you can and can't do, and also watching out for some of the kind of gotchas. There are terms in there where Oracle refer in their contracts to web pages, and they will change those web pages. And you need to be aware of that. So if you're going into a particular phase, whether it's a negotiation or whatever it may be, then dig out that contract again, go through it with a fine-tooth comb, look at all the references, make sure you understand that. But I think the other thing to understand in this process is that the guys fighting you on the other side, of the Oracle reps who are looking at the contract, they are interpreting clauses in that contract as well. And they're not necessarily lawyers, and they're probably not lawyers, and they're not going to take you on over that contract. So it's two different points of view. So if you give your point of view and they give their point of view, then there's going to be a little bit of a gap in the middle. And it's being strong again, making sure you understand where you are, and understanding what Oracle is likely to do. You know, they not only do they update their terms, but they do things like auto renewals. So recently they changed their auto renewal process. So it used to be that you would get an invoice and you paid it, and that would show that you were renewing. Whereas now you have to opt out. So being aware of changes like that is something that you really need to do. So and finally, really on this point, get some expert advice. I mean, the guy I mentioned at the start of this point, who's got an organisation that used to kind of helps customers. We're not people to help you with the expert advice around licensing, but there are experts out there that'll help you understand all of the ins and outs of your contract, so that you can't be bamboozled. You know, the Oracle sales guys will come to you and say, "Oh, well, this is what this term means." One of the ones they used recently was matching service levels. So they would say, well, if you've got any Oracle software, you can't cancel your contract because you have the matching service level policy. What that policy actually said was, if you've got a system like an Oracle database, then any software on that system has to be at the same level of support. So it's either all in-premise support with Oracle, or it's all out of support with Oracle, or some variation thereof. What it doesn't mean is you can't throw that system away and keep another system. So it's understanding your contract and understanding where you are. So really important.
That's some great points there, Mark. I just to reiterate, you know, the URL links. I mean, it's been a bane of Oracle customers for years. Oracle tweaking things, you know, without making much noise about it, and suddenly you suddenly find the audit team arriving and they're saying you're out of compliance. And I saw this interesting webinar from a lawyer not so long ago, just talking about, you know, law and these hyperlinks, these URL links in contracts, and what does it really mean? And the end of it was, he said, when you sign a contract that's got URL links in, whether it's Oracle or anybody else, what you should do on the day you sign it is go to those URL links and take a physical copy of what those links say, because that's the contract you're legally signing. If they then change it subsequently, sometimes they tell you and sometimes they don't, and then the audit team rolls in and says, hey, look at the new clause and you're now out of compliance, you can say, no, our contract's this, and here's the link as it was when we signed it. And I thought that was a great tip, you know, to take away. And the other thing you mentioned there was about auto renewals. The way they tweak these things and play with little clauses in the contract, which, you know, it's not really to a client's benefit, it's really to Oracle's benefit to do this sort of stuff. And rolling in auto renewals and extending that, sometimes it's 30 days, other contracts I see it's 90 days auto renewal. Clients get caught out with that. You know, they think we got 90 days to the renewal date. No, let's think about this. Do we want to renew? Should we look at third-party support? Should we do something else? And suddenly they find, actually, we've auto renewed. Nothing you can do about it for another year. Anyway, learn a lesson and come back 6 months out, not 3 months out. You know, and I think that's a vital point. And the other final point I'd just say on this, and understanding the contract, is Oracle's, what I've seen is they're very adept at taking a client who's got multiple Oracle contracts signed over many years, different end dates, start dates, and they suggest to the client, why don't you consolidate all of those into one single contract and makes it all simple for billing and administration? Yes, it does. But why are they doing that? The reason they do that is because in the contract, and Mark, you'll know this very well, Oracle contracts say you can't, if you've got one contract with loads of products in it, you can't carve out a bunch of those products and perhaps put them with third-party support, you know, to save money or to get a better level of service. It's all or nothing. You know, that's the way the contract's written. It's all or nothing. So if you've got lots of different contracts, you could carve out a few of them and keep some with Oracle and take some to third party. But if you put it all in one contract, which Oracle likes you to do, then suddenly it's all or nothing. So you might want to carve out a little bit, Hyperion or whatever it is. But now you can. And it's a little trick they played recently. So watch out for the consolidation thing. It does simplify administration and billing, but it does away some options from what you might want to do in the future.
Great. So moving on to tactic 2, Mark B, from your perspective, conducting an internal audit first. Why is that so important?
It's vitally important. If you think about negotiation 101, if you go back to negotiating anything, before you start negotiating, you need to know what you've got and what you need. So you need to prepare. Preparation is you know, the large part of the hard work here. But if you prepare well, you will negotiate successfully. So if you think about an Oracle situation, you should do your own internal audit of what you've got. What's your licensing estate, what you're actually using versus what you're contracted for. Hopefully it's compliant, by the way. And obviously there's software asset management tools in the space that can help you with all of that, so that you can compare actual usage versus license usage. And if there's any non-compliant elements, you can either buy licenses to get compliant, or you might find you got over license, which is very popular in the Oracle world, and popular, but from a very negative reason, because you're paying maintenance on stuff you're not using. And by the way, you can't get rid of it, according to Oracle anyway. First thing you got to do to prepare for negotiation of whether it's a renewal or anything else, look at what you got, use asset management tools to understand it, so that you're comparing your actual usage, and then talk about your tech roadmap and think about where you're going with all of that stuff. So then you can prepare for negotiation. So you know what you got, you know what you need, then you can go and talk to Oracle about, let's start a negotiation and start talking about doing a deal. The other thing about understanding what you got, another priority for doing that work, and by the way, it's not a one-off thing. These asset management and what you got is not just something you do just before a renewal, and then you can wait a year and come back and do it again. It's something you should be doing on a reasonably regular basis as best you can, all the other work you've got to do, because Oracle loves to audit. And they've got a massive audit team. They love to roll in and audit, and they love to find non-compliance, and then that starts a negotiation, and you probably end up buying new stuff you don't want again, and away you go. And we've all seen the stuff that's in the courts in Germany and in the US, where pension funds are suing Oracle right now. It's all out in the public domain, this stuff, and they're suing them because they've used audits as a sales tactic, allegedly. Better say that. They've used audits as a sales tactic to sell cloud, even when the client didn't want cloud. But the audit gave them a reason, gave them a negotiation leverage to force cloud into a client. And of course, it buffed up their cloud numbers, and of course, the stock price went up. And of course, then when it came out, this isn't quite true. The pension funds got unhappy because they're investing in Oracle stock. So, back to what you're trying to do is you need to constantly monitor your Oracle estate, Oracle licensing rules, and make sure you stay compliant. It's great preparation for negotiations, perfect presentation in case you get that audit notification letter coming through from Oracle. And from my perspective, if you're not doing that, you are just sitting there waiting to be ravished by Oracle, for want of a better phrase, whether it's at renewal time, or they sell you more stuff, or they audit you. If you're not keeping an eye on your own house and seeing how things build and what you need and what you're using, what you're not using, you leave yourself wide open to those canny Oracle sales guys who will take more money out of your pocket. Mark?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the important things is to understand how customers get into these positions, and the reason is it's just life, really. So what happens is, you buy your first Oracle system way back when, and you buy some licenses for, let's say, database, and you've got a third-party application on top, and then you buy some tuning packs and all these other things, and you're licensed appropriately for that system. Then something else comes along, you buy some more licenses for another system and some more for another system. And 10 years, 15 years later on, you've got this massive estate and you're not sure what's what. And so each of those invoices details the product, and they may have related to a system that you bought way back when, and you may not be using that system anymore. Or what you then need to do is really take the whole view of the whole estate. So what you have is a series, and almost all customers have this, is a series of Oracle invoices. Now, you've bought those products, you're entitled to use those products. It doesn't mean that invoice needs to be applied to system one that you bought it for. So when you then look at it and you go, well, actually, you know what, I've got, Oracle processor licenses for 100 processors, but I've only got 50 processors of database. Well, what you can then do is look through your licenses, decide which license applies to the system, provided it covers the products you're using on that system, because these licenses aren't version compliant, they are product compliant. So basically you need to say, well, I'm using database, tuning pack, and partitioning on that system. These 3 invoices, they all cover that system. And you can then look at maybe retiring one of those invoices. And again, knowing your estate, conducting that internal audit puts you in a very strong position. I think the other thing when you come to do this audit is to understand that Oracle will never say you're compliant, never. It's in their business model. So what they will do is they'll send their audit team in, they'll audit you, and they'll come up with a report, and they'll say there's the position, and this is how much you owe us because you're under license by X. And it's down to you to defend yourselves and say to the customer, to Oracle, look, no, you've got that bit wrong. This is what we're actually using. And if you've done that internal audit first, you're in such a strong position there. And at the end of the day, these documents actually are used by Oracle to negotiate with you, and they want to just get more revenue from you. And that's the whole purpose of this. They don't care really whether you're compliant. It's the money at the end of it. So conducting your internal audit, understanding that Oracle may come back with points and they probably won't be correct. I mean, I've seen it multiple times where what the auditors have said wasn't true. Because maybe they didn't have the big picture, maybe they hadn't looked at the whole estate, maybe they hadn't conducted the plans, maybe they made some errors. So, if you're in a really strong position and you on top of everything with that internal audit, then you're in such a strong position when it comes to Oracle. And also look at planning your way out of this agreement. If you've got a number of Oracle agreements and that's what you used to have and you've evolved over time and you don't need that many now, and then you look into the future and you look at what you might be using in a year or 2 years or 3 years time, and you know that some of these systems are going to go, then factor that into your plans and factor that into negotiations. And, maybe think, well, in a year's time, I'm going to retire this other invoice and then I'm going to pay less support. So it's about having complete control of that, and knowledge is key in all that.
Tactic number 3, right-sizing your estate. What does this mean, Mark S?
So in tactic number 2, we talked about potentially retiring invoices, but right-sizing your estate is understanding where your systems are and on what servers they are and whether they're appropriate anymore. Because what happens over many years again is that these systems, you may have, you might have bought a system that's running on Oracle 9 database and it has a third-party system on top of it, and it's fine, but you can't upgrade it even though Oracle want you to upgrade to version 18, 19, whatever of the database, because the vendor of that third-party application says, well, no, we don't support that version, it's only versions 8 or 9. So when you then look at that estate and you understand your plans and you match it up to your invoices, you can then start to say, well, actually, I don't need so many processor licenses, I can retire some of those. Looking at the shelfware that you're using, as Mark said on an earlier point, Oracle don't allow you to retire shelfware. But understanding what shelfware is on what invoice, and therefore maybe some of those other invoices can map to other systems, means that you might be able to make economies of scale in all of that. And look at the future. A lot of people are taking their legacy Oracle systems and they're saying, well, I want the benefits of cloud, so I want to move that to a cloud, but I don't necessarily want to move it to Oracle's cloud. I just want a cloud. So you can move it, for example, to Amazon Cloud Services, so you can get the benefits of a system in the cloud with all the flexibility of processors and disk and all that kind of stuff, storage, whenever you need it. But as you do those things, it's about understanding your estate and saying, well, actually, that's the whole system. That's great. It's going to be there for another 3, 4, 5 years. If I move it to the cloud, I can, leave it there indefinitely. And so you remove yourself from the constraints of the hardware. You start to make it a flexible system that's performant and it's on the latest technology, and you're optimizing your use of your licenses. So there's a lot of work that needs to go into these things and understanding where you are now, where you're going. And also I would suggest what people don't really do enough is be honest with themselves and say, I've been trying to replace that system for 5 years and I've never got around to it. And you know what? It'll probably be another 5 years. So let's move it to Amazon and let's just not worry about that, because we want to concentrate on the front line system. So it's about, being honest with yourself, planning it all out, and then you can make sure that your estate is probably a lot smaller than you thought it could be. And again, going back to the last point, you can then put yourself in a very strong position. So Mark, have you got anything to add?
Yeah, all great points there, Mark. And yeah, let me give you the flip side of that. Let me give you Oracle's view of this when they think of right-sizing your estate as a customer. When they think of right-sizing, they think of how can they grow your estate? How can they grow their footprint in there? And of course, we mentioned earlier that Oracle contracts really don't allow you to take out products you're not using, take out shelfware, reduce your maintenance spend or whatever it may be, or your subscription spend. They're not built for that. But when they talk about right-sizing your estate, what they do is they say, okay, look, maybe 20% of your estate is licensed software you're not using, maybe never going to use, but you're paying maintenance or subscription on it. They'll say, why don't you take that spend and put it into Oracle Cloud or new Oracle applications or whatever it be. So what they do when they're thinking about right-sizing your estate, they obviously, as I say, want to expand your footprint. So they will take your shelfware spend, put it into a potentially new cloud spend. So, what does that do for Oracle? It maintains their revenues. So, worst case, it's just revenue, even though you kind of product substitute a bit in there. But at best case, they can product substitute and increase a little bit. because obviously what they're looking for is net new revenues in Oracle. That's the big thing that pays the big bucks on commission. So when they want to right size your estate, they're looking to take stuff you're not using, replace it with stuff you might want to use, ideally Oracle Cloud, because obviously that's their sales focus. That's where the commission plan is targeted today. And they want to move you to their cloud using this right sizing as a leverage or excuse to do that. So, you know, back to Mark's point, your remit here, if you don't want Oracle's cloud or you don't want this new stuff, is to just try and reduce what you're paying to Oracle for your to what you're actually using. But the challenge is that's not Oracle's remit, and that's not what Oracle's contract says. So unless you do something dramatic, third-party support is a good option. But if you don't, unless you do something dramatic, you're stuck in this wheel of selling motion where they're trying to upsell you continuously, and you're trying to get things reduced to a reasonable level. And it becomes a real challenge, and it becomes quite a contentious negotiation then to try and find something that gives Oracle something, but at the same time gets you the result you want, which is cutting your costs.
Mark B, you put forward tactic 4 for us, which was escaping your ULA. What was your thinking behind this?
Yeah, this ULAs, I see so many of these. A lot of people come to me and they bring me ULAs they're either in or they're about to get into, and they say, you know, what can you do with this, or is this a good deal, or how do we get out of it? Let me just start this by talking about, you know, ULAs. They are very good for Oracle. They're very good for Oracle because they guarantee revenues for a fixed period of time. They lock out the competition. They restrict you and stop you taking advantage of third-party support, like Support Revolution. So for 3 reasons, Oracle loves ULAs, and obviously they pay good commission to their sales guys to sell them. So if they're pitching it to you for the first time, this is what they're trying to get out of it. If you're already in it, then let me just explain. I think there's 3 ways you can view a ULA, only one of which is good. The good place for a ULA is for a business that is growing very quickly, you know, where you can't even estimate your applications or database usage going forward. You just know you're going to need a lot because you are on a fast track. And if you're doing that, then a ULA can be a very good licensing tool to actually get free stuff from Oracle. And if you work it really well, you can take a real advantage of this and save an awful lot of money. But here's the thing. The other 2 camps of clients, i.e. the ones who are relatively static in their growth trajectory, certainly static in their use of Oracle, or are in a declining phase as a business or their use of Oracle, both of those 2 camps, ULA is not a good place to be because it is restrictive in what you can do and it's expensive. So if you're growing, take a look at ULAs. If you're static or declining, and bearing in mind the situation and the economy we're in at the moment, who's growing, very few I suspect, then maybe if you're in a ULA, you should consider getting out of it and getting out of it your next renewal. And the other point I'd make on ULAs, back to the diagram and slide here is, you know, they are misnamed. They are not unlimited. If you think about it, it's a limited term, typically 3 years. It's a limited set of Oracle products, you know, a stack of maybe 10 or 15, 20 of their products out of their hundreds they've got. So it's limited on products. Even the products themselves within a ULA can have a cap on them. So, I mean, that doesn't make sense. You put it in an unlimited license agreement, put a cap on your usage, but they're in there, and I see that very commonly. It's limited to geography often. It's limited to your company and your subsidiaries and your affiliates. If you've named them, if you haven't, they're not included. It doesn't include new products they bring out or acquire during the period of your agreement. So I could go on and on and on, but it's not unlimited. Just think of it as a different licensing agreement, but it has restrictions and it can be expensive if you use it in the wrong way. So just be very careful about that. And the other thing I mentioned on the slide here is there's a mistaken thing that Oracle clients think if you've got a ULA, then you won't get audited. Think again. Of course, stuff that's in the ULA, you know, it is unlimited, so therefore nobody's going to go around counting that. But they will still look at the products you've got in there, especially if you've got some that are capped, because there is, you know, there's a measurement to be done there. And maybe in the ULA, you know, with some of these products you download from Oracle, you get these additional packs added to it, which, you know, your users can turn on. Oops, but you're not for. Oops, and it's not in your ULA. Oh dear. and the audit team can find that. So even within a ULA, you can find an audit non-compliance. And Oracle's team is really good at that. And most clients, they've got a stack of products within the ULA, but they typically have other Oracle licenses outside of the ULA for products that they don't want unlimited capability for. And of course, that's a classic place for Oracle audit teams to go crawling around as well. So don't think ULAs is audit protection. It is not. If you're buying it for that, it's a very expensive insurance policy that doesn't work. So avoid that. And then, of course, my recommendation, if you're a business that's relatively static as a business and your Oracle estate static, or you're declining as a business, or your Oracle estate's declining, and you're in the ULA, then at your next renewal, you must get out. You must go through the certification process and get out of it, or else you're going to find yourself paying a fortune for a limited stack of products and getting diminishing value out of it. So get out of the ULA at your next time, but do read the certification process that ULAs have in them. They're fairly prescriptive, and there's nothing necessarily onerous about the way they're written, but you need to understand them and do it right. Because a lot of people come out of ULAs thinking, oh, I'll get out of my ULA and I'll save some money, I'll cut my costs. Well, often that's not what happens. But if you read the certification process right, and you've got a good handle on your estate, and you can minimize usage of products before you certify, there are ways to come out of this in a more effective manner. But I think for those two sets of businesses, if you're static or you're declining business and use of Oracle, get out of the ULA at the next opportunity. By the way, once you're out of ULA and you're back into the normal world of licensing with Oracle, then you open up all sorts of options for you, including third-party support, of course. So, that's a good segue to you, Mark.
Thanks, Mark. And I think the ULA, people get into these things when they're so busy that they see, oh God, I've got, my business is growing so fast, I'm going to have to implement systems everywhere. I know I need some kind of Hyperion or some e-business suite or some database or business intelligence, so I'm going to get them on the list, and I'm going to do those within the next 3 years. So I'll fix the price in there. I don't have to talk to Oracle again at a time. Of course, Oracle are just rubbing their hands at this point and say, well, I don't think you can implement all those, but I'm going to sell them to you. And guess what? When you've got the ULA in there, the Oracle prices don't go down. So when it comes to the renewal of the ULA, they're not going to let you kind of reduce the price. So again, with the current business climate, and where the amount of people at the moment that are growing exponentially that need ULAs, very few, I would suggest. So most people, I would recommend exactly what you said, Mark, which is certify out. The certification process is going to take you something like 12 months because you've got to understand everything. You've got to look at your ULA. You've got to understand what the outcome is you want to achieve, and you've got to engage Oracle, and and all that stuff takes time. So the certification process is certainly a way out of it, but if you don't take control of it and take charge of getting yourself out of that ULA, Oracle are not going to help you get out of the ULA because the sales guy wants their commission. So if they promise to come back in a month or 2 months with some proposal, in the meantime you need to be doing what you need to be doing and making sure that everything's ready for you to go. So you need to be in control of everything in the process. So I would reiterate your point there, Mark, that let's start the certification process for most people, because now's the right time to do that. Get control of your estate again. I mean, I've heard of ULAs that people have been in for 15 years or more because it comes to the end of the ULA, they haven't understood what it is, how to get out of it, and Oracle goes, well, you know what, I'll roll it over for another period, and the customer goes, well, I'll do that then, and then I'll come back to it. But you can't afford to do that. Businesses need to find money wherever they can these days, and understanding that ULA and certifying out of it is certainly high on the agenda.
Thanks for that. So for tactic 5, we've got managing the sales timeline. Mark S., can you give us a guide through this, please?
Absolutely. So the sales timeline, I think way back at the start of this talk, Mark outlined that Oracle are quarterly driven, and having worked before Support Revolution was a third-party support provider. In a previous life, I was managing director of an Oracle consultancy for 20 years, so I know quite a lot about working with Oracle. The Oracle sales reps are driven quarterly, but really the end of May is a massive period for them. What happens in Oracle sales is if you don't hit your target or you're one of the lower performers, then you're let go. And so it's a dog-eat-dog world in there, and that's the way Oracle has to behave. It's got investors, it needs to report its earnings, so that drives behavior, and that behavior makes their salespeople very focused. So on their timeline, what they're trying to do is get you to do certain things or not do certain things in the way that they want you to do them. And so understand that and understand what you need to do by what time. So what, for example, you'll find is the sales guy might say, well, you've asked for a reduction here, or you've asked to reduce some shelfware. I'll go back and ask. And in the meantime, you've got the quote. So you've got the quote for the renewal or the extension or whatever. I'll go back and ask. And then you'll chase up the sales rep and they'll say, well, I've got to go back to Larry Ellison's office in California, Redwood Shores. I've got to get there okay because you're an important customer. And then you'll hear nothing for 2 weeks. And then you'll phone them back. Have you heard? Oh, no, but I expect to get it through. We got the deal on the table. I'm sure we'll get that through. It's the start of May now, but we got a couple of weeks. And then guess what? I haven't heard from Larry's office, and well, I'm afraid I couldn't get that deal for you. So because you've let them control that timeline, they've manipulated it. They knew they were never going to get an answer. They may or may not have forwarded it to anybody in the organisation for approval. So understand your timeline, and it's if you can sort of take the control of, well, I'm going to leave you, I'm not going to take that renewal, I'm going to go to third-party support, let's say, then that increases your purchasing power straight away, even if you're not considering it. It's a great tactic to start to get in control of that again. Understand what's a good outcome as well. A good outcome for you is probably not a good outcome for Oracle. Mark said earlier on about what they are driven to do is increase revenue and sell you more and force you to the cloud and sell your licenses, and you may not necessarily want. Don't do that. Know that you don't want that. And one of the later tactics we've heard is on extending ULAs. What Oracle will do is, instead of extending it for 3 years, they'll say, well, I'll extend it for 1 year, but as long as you promise to go to our cloud in that time. Well, you may then take that on board, and then what they've done is they've added cloud to your ULA, and so you're spending more with them. And then when it comes to renewal time again, you've got a bigger bill. So you've really got to make sure that you're negotiating well, you understand the timeline, and that will allow you to understand their behavior. But also put yourselves in their shoes. They're going to try and manipulate you. So give them deadlines. Say, well, if I don't hear of a reduction in the price by then I'm going to assume you're not going to do it. So I'm going to go to SAP, or I'm going to move to Amazon Cloud, or they need to think that you've got an alternative. And for many, many years, Oracle has thought that they were the only game in town, and that has driven their behavior. And so they don't believe you a lot of the time. So manage the sales timeline, tell them you're going somewhere else, get in control of it, and then you'll really have a much stronger negotiating position. Mark, does that resonate with your experience?
Yeah, exactly. Some great points there, Mark. I mean, it comes back to preparation. It comes back to, putting the right time and effort into this whole process. And managing the timeline is one of the key elements of the negotiation. As you say, I mean, Oracle are past masters at delaying giving you stuff, pricing updates or a renewal quote, whatever it may be, or answering questions you've got. And, why do they do it? Well, it's kind of sales 101 if you think of it like that. And Oracle's the only one who does this. I mean, Microsoft do this, and SAP do, others do this. They think by slowing the flow of information to you as a customer during a renewal process or during a negotiation process, if they slow the flow of information to you, so you were waiting for their, the Larry Ellison deal desk, whatever it is, to check the deal and come back and say, oh yeah, we'll give you an extra 2% or whatever it is. What it does, it's kind of sales 101. They think that just narrows the negotiation window. So they're crimping away the time towards when you have to do a deal because you've got a renewal date or a contract date or a project's got to start. And so they play this silly game, which is just, you ask them for a quote, yeah, be back as soon as I can. Oh, deal desk are on it, we're waiting. The reality is, in the 90% of those times, no one's doing anything. No one's doing anything in Oracle. They're just, the sales guy's just putting it in his drawer. I'll phone him in a week's time, taking that negotiation window down to when you have to do a deal. So what you need to do, as Mark's rightly said, you need to take control of the negotiation timeline. So you need to plan it out from the very beginning to when you want to conclude the deal. As it says on the slide here, you need to what you want, what your red lines are, what you're willing to give as part of the deal, as part of give-get in the negotiation. When you're actually doing a step with Oracle, and that step includes asking for something or asking for a quote or a refresh quote or a better price or a better discount, you need to give them a specific time and date when they need to respond with that. So what I mean by, let's say it's a Tuesday today, and let's say you want something by Friday. And Oracle would probably love to give it a week Friday, just to waste another week. You should say, we need it on Friday. We need that information on Friday for a management meeting we're having on Friday. So just give us that information. If you don't give us the information on Friday, this Friday, and it's a week later before that information arrives, then the whole negotiation timeline has shifted a week, caused by Oracle being slow. Therefore, the end date, which we all hoped was May 31st, because that's the renewal date, is now June the 7th, because you've just wasted a week. Because we've got all of these things to get our internal processes aligned, and unless we have the pricing or that information, we can't do the next step. So Oracle, if you waste a week of our time, then you've wasted a week of this, the renewal. So the renewal is going to be late. So is it okay to do a June the 7th deal for a May 31st renewal? Sure, it's fine with you guys, isn't it? Just imagine what the Oracle guys are going to say to that when it goes into their next fiscal year. But yes, so control the timeline. It's vitally important to do that. And then a final point on this, which Mark raised and mentioned, which is don't be forced into their cloud. Cloud is Oracle's future. They want you on their cloud. They don't want you in AWS or Azure or anywhere else. Okay, they've got partnerships set up with them. Why have they done that? Well, because their cloud's not quite as successful as those other ones, and they recognize the customers want to go on those other ones. And then they put up stupid licensing models that say, well, hang on, if you license a database in an AWS cloud, you've got to count the calls differently and cost more money to be there, and it's cheaper in Oracle. You see how these guys play it. They're just playing the game, but it hasn't worked for them. Oracle Cloud is not the success it's been before. Okay, they've had a new refresh. It's more secure than it's ever been, apparently. I wonder what it was like before. Anyway, it's more secure now. And South Africa said, here's the new cloud, and it's fantastic. And that's their sales guys have a target to make of revenue, and that revenue is cloud revenue. That's what they're after with you for a renewal or support renewal or get you off premise, whatever it is. So don't be forced to cloud. The only time you should go to cloud, whether it's Oracle Cloud or someone else, is when it's right for you as a business to go to cloud for whatever application or product it is. Until then, don't let them pressure you to move to cloud. And by the way, if they're pressured to get you to cloud and you're a little reluctant to do that, guess what? They're going to make it more financially compelling for you to be less reluctant to do that. So you can play timelines, you can play pressure on their sales force to sell cloud, and you can get them to give you more stuff by actually not negotiating a lot, but by just sitting quietly and saying, actually, we're happy on premise, or we don't need to go for another year, or whatever it is. Lots of tactics you can play there.
So following on from managing the sales timeline, tactic 6, getting everything in writing. Mark B, what are your thoughts on this?
This is a must. This is an absolute must for your negotiation with Oracle. I mean, of course it is with any vendor, or even anything you're buying. You should always get stuff that's important to you in writing, ideally in the contract. Obviously, during a sales campaign from Oracle, the sales guys are talking to you, the technical guys are talking to you, the management's talking to your management, everybody's talking to everybody, and there's all this stuff going on. And there's things get said and promised and alluded to, and assumptions get made. And, so a bad negotiation ends with a standard Oracle contract with a lot of assumptions floating around in your organization about what you think you bought or signed up for or how long or whatever. And then guess what? Within a year, you're non-compliant, you're using stuff you shouldn't do, or you're not using stuff you bought, or you bought stuff you don't need. So the whole negotiation process should be in written form. So you might have a verbal meeting on the phone or a Skype meeting or a Zoom meeting, whatever it is, with Oracle, and you say, put that in writing, put that commitment in writing, put that item in writing, or here's a negotiation point, can you respond in writing? So you get a complete audit trail of your negotiation in writing. The key is put into the contract, so that's kind of locked in a legal sense, but also you've got a written audit trail of that negotiation, so that in the future, if the audit team rolls in from Oracle and says, oh, you thought this, but it's actually that, and you owe us $1 million, you can say, hang on, we got something from Oracle that says, no, it's this, it's that, whatever it is. So you've got an audit trail, you've got protection. Now that's the first thing, to get everything in writing. And like anything, most sales guys fluff stuff up a bit. I mean, that's their job, isn't it? To spin things up, to make them super shiny and sound super great, and new toys and all that sort of thing. Well, part of that embellishment, let's call it that, can lead you to interpret certain things in product that maybe don't exist. So in the contract, obviously, if you've got products, you know, you want product features and functionality in the contract, so you know exactly what you're buying, and you're not sold on the dream rather than the reality. And audit trail all of that, so make sure it's all put in writing. And including, I mentioned earlier about contracts and URL links, and print that out on the day of signing. I mean, that lawyer on that webinar I saw a while ago, great recommendation, and you should definitely do that. URL links have put no end of people out, and people have been audited, and they said, no, your URL link says this now, and therefore you're non-compliant, therefore you owe us money. And suddenly, instead of you going, oh no, stop there. Let's look at the link as it was when we first signed. You haven't got copies of that. So now you're into discussion with the sales guys and the audit team about, you know, another $1 million non-compliance. So everything in writing is essential, especially with someone like Oracle. Especially, you know, it's a complex organization full of a lot of people who you meet a lot of the time. They got a lot of products. They license them in a million different ways, and they keep changing the way they license it and bundle it and product names and all that sort of stuff. Get everything in writing, lock it down. You've got a good contract then, you've got an audit trail of the negotiation. So next time around, when you or someone else renews that contract, they can look back, follow the audit trail of negotiation you've done, and follow the pattern of negotiation as well. So they can learn from that, even if you're not around to do that. But if it's not in writing, as my bullet point says here, if it's not in writing, don't believe it. You know, anybody can say anything in a verbal environment, or down the pub with you, or don't worry about it, we'll sort that implementation out, or don't worry about that audit problem, we'll sort that. Unless it's in writing, you know, just if it's not in writing, worry about it. That's what I say. And by the way, just to finish this point before I hand to Mark, you know, I always say, if you get a salesperson, Oracle or whoever, who says something to you that just sounds too good to be true, or slightly outrageous, what could that? For example, this is the best deal we've ever done for a company in your industry. You know, you've got to keep your lid on this. This is super special. You know, rest assured, we've done everything we possibly can for you here. If a rep says that to you, ask them to put that in writing, or get their manager to put that in writing to confirm that this deal is indeed the very best deal, price-wise, discount, whatever metrics you want to put in there, that they've ever done in your industry. And you'll be surprised that they don't. Guess why? You got any comments on this particular thing?
Yes, thanks, Mark. I mean, when I first, way back when, maybe 15 years ago, I realized the sales reps didn't put things in writing. I thought, well, maybe it's just that sales rep. But then over the years, working with them on multiple deals where, you know, they'd be selling the licenses, we'd be doing implementations. No, they all do it. So, you know, they must be taught to do this. They must be. So, you know, Mark's point about getting everything in writing, they will put very little in writing, very, very little. They might send you a short email, but they will be on the phone to you all the time. But, you know, if you can just make sure you go back through that audit trail, just look at what they put in writing, because that's all that counts. All those phone calls don't count. And you'll find that you get very, very little. And what you get is that, you know, I mentioned earlier, you'll get a proposal, which wasn't quite the proposal you wanted, but that's in writing. And then when they fall back on it, in that contract says anything we talked about, anything else is superseded once you sign the contract. So, you know, also understand all of your contracts. You know, there's a master services agreement, and then there's contracts, and there's invoices, and it's all a very complicated thing. So make sure you understand it. But the everything in writing thing, understand that rep probably can't do it. So it is an acid test. It makes them go back and say, well, look, you know, they're demanding in writing. What can we put in writing? If you get stuff in writing, but make sure you analyze what that says as well, because, you know, should and would and could and all those things in there. These people are masters of negotiation. So when you're in, and if you think about it, what they actually do is some of these guys might only do 2 or 3 deals a year, might maybe even do 1 deal, and that's your deal. And what they'll do is they'll spend all their time thinking about it. How am I going to get the customer to do this? What should I tell them this week? I'll put that contract in a drawer for a week. So all of that stuff, they are spending their whole life just trying to close this deal. So be very, very careful about how you conduct yourself and get everything in writing. If they won't put it in writing and you insist on it, you know, maybe they'll do things like say, well, I'll get my manager to call you. But no, I want it in writing. If you're going to say that we should get this deal, put that we should get this deal in March and give me a date. But you'll find that they won't do that. But the whole thing is really about understanding how they're likely to treat you. And I think if you start off in the process thinking that understanding this guy, all that they're going to spend their whole time doing is trying to get your money by a certain date, then it kind of puts you in a position to say, well, actually, I've got to put some more time and effort into this thing. I've got to really be in control of it all. And I'm going back to some of the earlier points. If you push for something by a certain date, push for it in writing. If it doesn't occur in writing, then it didn't occur. So you've got to be really strong through this process and understand that it's a battle between two worthy adversaries, and the guy on the other side of the fence, or the girl on the other side of the fence, is spending a lot of effort and a lot of their intellectual time thinking about this and thinking about how they're going to get you to do what they want you to do. So Mark's point about getting everything in writing, I think once you use that and you see how little they put in writing, you'll really see what we mean.
Just to finish off the point, Mark, I know one company, big company, global company, who only negotiate via email. They don't have calls, they don't meet the vendors face to face, they don't chat down the pub, they don't play on the golf course and do hospitality. They treat every negotiation, they do it via email. So they send a list of wants to the vendor for the renewal, they put a proposal back to them, they critique it, send a bunch of questions and challenges back, and it just goes around this loop of email trail backwards and forwards. So everything's in writing. It's very odd when you see it happening for the first time, because there is no verbal communication occurs. If the rep tries to call them, they don't take the call. If the rep turns up in the lobby, and they've had this, sales rep turns up in the lobby, they just say, can't see you. We've asked you some questions via email, respond via email. It is actually a very strong way of negotiating. It controls the process unbelievably, and of course, everything in writing.
And just to finish up on that point, I think if you, from a sales perspective, you understand that if you run a professional sales program for a new system, then you're going to issue, I don't know, an IT invitation to tender, a request for information, all sorts of other documents. You're going to get everything in writing from anybody that wants to respond. What you need to remember in this situation is there's only one person that you're negotiating with. They don't have to respond to everything in writing because they're not competitive. So, it's when you get a professional procurement person running that show opposite the Oracle sales rep, then you've got two kind of titans battling each other out. So that's the kind of people that you need to get involved in, is to make sure that everything, they're put under pressure. And a professional procurement department or a category lead will greatly help you in that. So they will make sure that you conduct that process and you get as much as you possibly can from it.
Finally, tactic 7 is switching to third-party support. I think it makes the most sense for Mark S. to lead this one.
Thanks, Dan. Third-party support. Well, the background to our organisation, we were an Oracle partner for about 20 years, and what we saw through the last financial crisis in around 2008, 2009 was that customers were being forced into upgrades that they didn't want to do. There were de-support dates. The new versions of software were coming out that they weren't really getting any major new changes in. A lot of the software is 30 years old, and so the innovation phase has been and gone. And there are some keeping the lights on, a few little tweaks here and there, but way back then, what we started to see was customers in the marketplace thinking, well, what am I getting for my money? And people were asked to do business cases for upgrades and things like that, and they could never come back with one. And we were asked to help in a number of cases, and we'd say, well, there is no business case. The only business case is you're going to stay supported by Oracle. So way back when, we saw that and we thought, well, this market is kind of on the wane really, and unless Oracle does something drastic, like brings out a whole new set of products and new versions that just blow us away, then this market is under threat because customers don't want to do upgrades and they're spending lots on support. So, I think 2012 we founded the support revolution, but the whole point of it was we saw what was coming. We saw that people were paying far too much money for far too little return, and that was never going to end well for Oracle. It's the customer that votes for whatever product we end up putting out there. If the customer sees, well, I agree with you and I'm not getting the innovation, then they do start to look around. So switching to third-party support to a vendor like ourselves, well, what it does, it kind of, not only does it make massive savings for you, so every customer saves a minimum of 50% on what they currently pay to Oracle. We guarantee that. What they also get though is they get so much more flexibility. So we're a partner that works with them. We work kind of in conjunction with them. We hear all the time that we're a partner and we're all working towards the same goal. And so we want to help customers with Oracle estates. We understand that you've got some old system over here. You might want to keep there for a while. You can never upgrade it. You've got some new systems that you want to keep maybe with Oracle or move to another vendor. So we help you to do all that. We help you to unpick your estate, and you might want to give some software to us to help support, to provide support and maintenance on. And you might want to keep others with Oracle, and you can do that provided you've licensed separately, as we talked about earlier. But all of that helps you to start regain control of your estate. So no longer is Oracle kind of bullying you and knocking on the door saying you have to do this or else I'm not going to do that. What you start to do is start to get control again. So you start to save money. You start to say, well, actually, I've safeguarded that old system over there that we've used for 20 years. We're not going to use it. We're not going to upgrade it for another 5 or 10 years. And now I've got a partner that I know will support that. And our ERP system over there, we used to upgrade that all the time, but there's not really any changes there anymore. So why don't we give that to Support Revolution, and maybe the one or two of those leading edge systems over there we'll keep with Oracle. So all that flexibility and being in control of your estate is a much better position to be in than to be under the cosh, to be Oracle knocking on the door saying you've got to do this, you've got to move to iCloud. If you don't do this, I'm going to audit you. But interestingly, the other thing that it allows you to do is you start to get off of Oracle's radar. So before moving to somebody like ourselves, you had a massive estate. Oracle was spending all their time getting you to renew that and extend that, and maybe you had a dedicated Oracle rep that all their job was to do that. Well, when you've reduced that estate by, let's say you reduced it by 90% and you kept 10% with Oracle, then that sales rep now, it gets a much lower income, and Oracle gets a much lower income from you, and so they're nowhere near as interested in you. So maybe if you move away initially, they might say, well, I'm going to send the audit team in, and they send the audit team in whether you're moving away to third-party support or not. This is the new norm, with nobody buying software these days because of the current climate. What Oracle are going to do is you can expect them to increase audits on absolutely everybody because they need to find more money. But by moving away or starting to move away your estate, you're becoming a smaller customer to Oracle and you're not as interested. Next year that rep's got a territory. He looks at your account and he says, well, they're quite small, so I'm not going to with them this year. So you're starting to get in control. You're starting to move away. You're starting to move to your own, the beat of your own drum, if you like. So, it's about getting that control again. And, and I'm not saying that all Oracle software is bad. Some of it, you might want to keep with them, like I said. But if you're in control of your estate, you understand it, you've got your licenses, you understand the position, you understand your roadmap, you're in a great position to then say, well, actually, that gives me the knowledge to say, right, Oracle, you're looking after those 2 front-end systems because I actually value you for those. But Support Revolution, you take these 90% of the systems because they're all stable. I'll replace them at some point. I might move them to the cloud. But then you've got that flexibility. You've started to regain control. You're not getting all these audits and threats, and you're not having to deal with Oracle all the time. Spend all your time speaking to a vendor that really is just trying to get money out of you. They're not somebody that is helping you in this. They're somebody that wants to. They've got their own agenda. Obviously, they need to increase the share price, and you need to get in control of your own fortune. So looking at that, taking advantage of third-party support where it's appropriate is going to help you. And we've got some great customers that are really making fantastic savings on this, and some huge names. And with the current climate, I can see there's a lot of people going to take advantage of this sort of offering. And Mark, what are you seeing in the market?
Well, here's the interesting thing, Mark. I mean, you make some great points there, and we talked at the beginning of this webinar about the time we're living in and trying to find cost savings, and what a perfect way to do it with third-party support. It's slashing your software maintenance costs by 50% or more. It doesn't get better than that right off the bat. And then of course there's all the other good things that go along with it, quality of support and everything else, and tickets quickly rather than disappearing into the ether as some seem to do. But here's the thing. I've been monitoring the third-party support market. Well, I think I was writing about it. I wrote research for Forrester and other bits and pieces in 2011, 2012, and I've followed it ever since. And it's one of the really good disruptors to the industry that's come along in the last few years. Disruptors in the sense that now you have a choice. If Oracle customer, before third-party support, you can only get support from one place, and there's pretty much no way you're going to run without support. You know, it's like an insurance policy as much as anything else to keep you alive. So before third-party support, you had one place to go, and guess what? They could charge you what they liked. And typically, you know, if you look at the financial numbers of Oracle, and I know they've rehashed how they present their numbers now, but in the old days, you could look at it and you could clearly see that support for them gave them about a 90 or 92% profit margin. So they only actually spent about 8% of the money you pay for support to give you support, or to provide some R&D on the products. But a lot of the products on premise, at least today, there's no R&D really going into them. There is no next release coming. You're paying for a product that is at end of life if they haven't already announced it, because all their money's going into cloud. So for many, many years, they made a vast amount of profit out of it. For many, many years, it's been the cash cow of their businesses. You know, it's just a profit engine that just keeps giving. So that's why they're happy to discount new license sales massively in terms of discount, because they want to get the support stream running, because it runs and it runs and it runs, and it's 90+% margin, and what's not to like? And that's how they've got so big and so rich. But here's the thing. Are you happy paying, you know, somebody that much profit for a service that might not be the greatest thing since sliced bread, and maybe not putting a lot of money into R&D for the next release that maybe never is coming? You know, all these are big questions you need to ask yourself when you consider, should you stick with Oracle and stay with Oracle? Because there are genuine alternatives like Support Revolution in the marketplace. And of course, if you want to save money, like when I started talking here, if you want to save money, what a perfect thing to look at for a very quick win based on the cycles, obviously, of your renewals with Oracle support. But what a great way to slash a cost by 50%. There's not many vendors you could go to today in any shape or form and say, look, can you reduce your cost by 50%, please? And they go, oh, okay. They're not going to do it because, you know, it's their revenue stream. But here's a genuine way of actually saving money. And the final point I'd say on this is, and I see a lot of this, you know, where clients have moved to third-party support and you know, loving the quality of support, loving the savings. Of course they are. But the financial element of that is important, because yes, it's a cost saving. And maybe today in the pandemic world, you want to keep that cash in-house. But in the business as usual world, if you can make a chunky saving on support costs for some oldest technology that's running around, like Oracle on-premise stuff, for example, you can take that money you've saved and fund some new stuff, fund some new projects, fund some things your business needs to do in whether it's, you know, connecting better with your customers, connecting better with your suppliers, whatever it may be. There's a whole bunch of projects a CIO would be looking at, some of which are funded and some of which are not. What a great way to suddenly free up what he thought was tied down money, you know, gone money, which is already, you know, costed. It's paying support every year with Oracle, just pay it. If suddenly you could say, hey, we could take half of that and you free up that capital and spend it on something you really do need as a business. So some of those projects that are unfunded today, you can unlock and go and do some real benefit to your business, deliver real value. So from that perspective alone, it's definitely worth taking a look at if you've not looked at it before. But if nothing else, with this year, this time, this pandemic, you've got to save money. This is a go-to place. This is the top 3 of things I'd be suggesting you look at if you're talking to me about how can I save money today.
Thank you, Mark, for that incredibly interesting session. Just following up on that last tactic of third-party support, we've also put together an in-depth guide for how and why to go about this, from the reasons why you should be looking to leave Oracle support to the steps you need to take to cancel your contract and save that 50% on your support with Support Revolution. The link to download that is on the screen right now, but you can also find a PDF copy of that in the resources tab that's on your screen. Looking through the questions we've received so far in the session, I believe we've covered them all as part of the conversations that have taken place. There are a few that we haven't answered, but they are quite in-depth and specific, so we promise to come back to you separately. That said, if you do want a more in-depth conversation on any of the subjects that we have raised today, you can contact us via phone or email using the details on the screen below. And finally, thank you to everyone who signed in today to listen to our speakers, and thanks again to both Marks for your time. Also, remember, you will be sent a recording of this webinar to your email address, and we recommend downloading the accompanying white papers and fact sheets in the system window. I hope you have a great day, and thank you very much for attending. Goodbye.